Christopher Columbus, a hero known for being the first explorer to discover and set foot in America. But is that really true? Well, according to my history textbook in Columbus Day, it is. What if I told you Christopher Columbus didn't discover America, nor was he even the first European to set foot in America? A Viking by the name of Leif Erikson beat him to the discovery by 500 years. Today we take a deeper look into the story of Columbus and talk about some details your history textbook may have missed. Columbus was born and raised in Genoa, Italy in 1451. A time when European nations were sponsoring explorers in hope that they would find wealth in undiscovered lands. When Columbus was a young teenager, he got a job on a merchant ship. He stayed at sea until 1476, when pirates plundered and destroyed the ship as it was sailing along the Portuguese coast. Columbus survived the attack and floated ashore on a scrap of the merchant ship. He eventually made his way to Lisbon, Portugal, where he began to study mathematics, navigation, astronomy, and cartography. As Columbus sat there studying, he began to devise a plan that would change the world forever. Towards the end of the 15th century, explorers were trying to come up with a safe way to reach Asia from Europe. The journey was long, dangerous, and nearly impossible by land. Portuguese explorers eventually solved this problem by taking it to sea. They sailed along the West African coast and around Cape Hope. The explorers' route worked, but the journey was still very long. Christopher Columbus had a plan to shorten this journey. He introduced the sailors to his plan. He said,
"Guys, why don't we just sail across the Atlantic?"
What Columbus didn't know, though, is that the world was way bigger than he thought. Columbus believed that the Earth's circumference was very small, even though there were pretty accurate calculations of Earth's size at the time. He also didn't know that the Americas and the rest of the New World even existed.
According to my notes, this sail should be a breeze.
He told officials in Portugal and England about his plan, but none of them were interested. He wasn't getting any interest in his plan to sail west across the Atlantic because explorers and officials knew he had miscalculated Earth's size. Portugal even argued with him on his calculations.
No, this is not a good idea.
Eventually, in 1492, Columbus found a crowd interested in his plan. Two Spanish monarchs, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, were interested in his plan and willing to sponsor the voyage. Columbus's contract with the Spaniards promised that he could keep 10% of any riches he found and government of any new land discovered. On August 3rd, 1492, Columbus set sail from Spain. He left with a crew of 90 men and 3 ships: the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. Columbus was aboard the Santa Maria, the largest of the 3 ships. It took about 2 months for the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria to cross the Atlantic. On October 12th, Rodrigo, de Triana, a sailor aboard the Pinta, spotted land.
Land ho!
The three ships made landfall in what Columbus thought was the East Indies, but it was actually the Bahamas. They made landfall on a tiny island called Guanahani. Columbus claimed the land for himself and renamed it San Salvador. Columbus sailed from island to island in the Caribbean looking for gold, silver, and other valuables. He didn't find much, but he kept a diary the whole way of the weather he faced, wildlife he encountered, and the mood of the crew. He also talked about the locals on the islands and how they would make great slaves. In January 1493, Columbus left the Caribbean and set out for Spain. He left several men behind on what he thought was Japan, but was an island by the name of Hispaniola. His men set up a settlement on the island and attempted to establish a colony. It took Columbus about 2 months to cross the Atlantic and return to Spain. He brought back some gold, spices, and a few Indian captives. He was received with the highest honors from the Spanish rulers for finding land. They agreed to sponsor more of his expeditions. In September 1493, Columbus left the port of Cadiz, Spain, with 17 ships and 1,200 men. He set out with the goal to colonize land for Spain. While he was doing that, he would also conquer and Christianize the native Taino tribe. He sailed west across the Atlantic and landed in the eastern Caribbean. He passed through several tiny islands, renaming and conquering them all. He eventually arrived on a settlement in Hispaniola. He found his settlement on Hispaniola destroyed. He decided to leave his two brothers, Bartholomew and Diego, behind to rebuild the settlement, along with hundreds of enslaved natives. He headed west from Hispaniola. He was trying to find the mainland, China, but he obviously had no luck in finding it. Instead, he explored Cuba. Columbus continued to search for gold and other valuables, but he wasn't having any luck in finding any, so he just returned to Spain. He brought back with him a large number of enslaved people. In May 1498, Columbus sailed across the Atlantic for a third time. He sailed through South America and found little to no valuables once again. Although Columbus and his crew didn't find any valuables, they were the first Europeans to set foot in South America. Columbus eventually made his way to a settlement on Hispaniola. It was falling apart and it was destined for failure. The colonists were being treated horribly by the Columbus brothers and began to betray them. It got so bad on the island that Spanish authorities had to come over and put in place a new governor.
Spain, this is Spanish authorities. I'm gonna need some backup here.
Hey, you!
Columbus and his brothers were arrested for misgovernance and mistreatment of the colonists. He lost his title as governor of land discovered, along with many of the riches he found on his journey. They returned to Spain, where they were put in prison for 6 weeks. King Ferdinand released the Columbus brothers from prison, but they were stripped of all their noble titles. Four years later, Christopher Columbus was able to persuade the Spanish rulers to sponsor one more expedition. In 1502, Columbus left Cadiz, Spain, with 4 ships. Columbus sailed all through Central America. Along the way, he was hit by frequent storms, and his ship slowly began to deteriorate. It didn't help either that shipworms were eating holes in the wooden planking of the ships. Columbus sailed to western Panama and planned to cross to Spain from there. Him and his crew set up a fort and explored the land. When they were finally preparing to leave Panama and head back to Spain, a native tribe attacked Columbus and his men. Columbus and his crew held off the attack, but lost a number of men. Columbus and his crew left for Spain shortly after, but were immediately hit with the storm. Two of Columbus's ships had to be abandoned. Columbus had to stop, so he beached his 2 other ships on an island we know now as Jamaica. The native Arawaks welcomed Columbus and his crew. Over time, though, tensions began to rise as food and supplies decreased on the island. As this was all happening, Columbus began to form a desperate plan. He had an astronomical tables almanac with him covering the years 1475 to 1506. He studied his almanac and discovered that a total lunar eclipse would occur Thursday, February 29th, 1504. Columbus used this knowledge against the Arawak tribe. 3 days before the eclipse, Christopher Columbus told the Arawak chief that the Christian God was angry at his tribe for no longer helping Columbus and his crew. Columbus said, 3 nights from now, the Christian God will make the moon inflamed with anger, which would signify the evils that would soon be brought upon your tribe. 3 days from then, nighttime approached. The moon appeared, inflamed and bloody, looking like a fireball in the sky. The Arawaks were so terrified, they begged Columbus to turn the moon back to normal. Columbus said that he would have to talk to the Christian God about it in private. He locked himself in a cabin and turned an hourglass every half hour to time the stages of the lunar eclipse. Just before the end of the last stage, Columbus came out of the cabin and told the Arawaks that the Christian God had pardoned them. Almost right after he said that, the moon began to reappear white again. After that happened, the Arawaks treated Columbus and his men like kings. They fed them well and gave them all they had. On June 29, 1504, a ship from Hispaniola arrived to take Columbus and his crew home. Columbus returned to Spain, empty-handed. 2 years later, on May 20th, 1506, Columbus died of heart failure. He never found a passage from Europe to Asia. He actually did something bigger than that. Columbus kicked off the European exploration of America. A widespread transfer between the Old World, West Africa, and the New World was even named after him. The Columbian Exchange transferred animals, food, people, diseases all across the world. This was the first time in 10,000 years that people from the New World and Old World were trading and reconnecting with each other. 10,000 years before then was the Ice Age. During the Ice Age, the sea levels dropped exponentially due to large levels of seawater evaporating. The water that was deposited as snow and ice would take a really long time to re-evaporate. This meant not a lot of rain, which lowered the sea levels at this time. This exposed continental shelves, coastal plains, and land bridges connecting land masses. One of these land bridges was the Bering Strait Land Bridge. It connected northeastern Siberia and western Alaska. Hunter-gatherers from Asia used this land bridge to come over to America and set up America's first human settlement. The land bridge eventually disappeared with the Ice Age and split the human race into two. One side of the human race in Asia and Europe, and the other side in the Americas. Fast forward 10,000 years later, Christopher Columbus changed that and reunited us as one. So in the end, I wouldn't say Christopher Columbus discovered America. There was already like 1 million people there. I would say he discovered another human race for Europe and the rest of the world to trade and reconnect with. And I think that is what makes this event super historical. So after watching the video, what do you think of Christopher Columbus? Let me know in the comments below.